I did not always live in a small house. There was a time I lived in the biggest house in our town. It stood on a hill. White walls, tall gate, shiny cars. People used to stop and look at it. Some would whisper, "That is success." Some would say, "One day, I will build a house like that." When I first moved into that house, I believed I had won in life. I believed space meant peace. I believed size meant joy. I believed money meant rest. I was wrong. The house had many rooms. So many rooms that sometimes I forgot which light switch controlled which space. The ceilings were high. The windows were wide. The floors were cold and smooth. But the air inside was heavy. Not with dust, with tension. I remember the first night clearly. I stood in the master bedroom and looked at the city lights below. Everything looked small from up there. The houses looked like toy boxes. The people looked like ants. I felt powerful. Then I heard shouting from downstairs. It was my brother arguing with my sister. It started over something small. It always started small. Who used whose car? Who finished the last juice? Who did not greet properly? But in that house, small things never stayed small. They grew. The walls were wide, but the anger inside them was wider. I used to tell myself, this is normal. Every family argues. But I began to notice something. The bigger the house became, the smaller our hearts felt. When we lived in our old small house years ago, we used to sit close to each other. There was only one fan in the living room. So we would all gather under it. We shared one television. We watched the same shows. We laughed together. In the big house, everyone had their own television, their own bathroom, their own space. And slowly, everyone had their own silence. But silence is not always peace. Sometimes silence is just anger waiting. The kitchen in that big house was large. Bigger than the whole living room of our old house. Yet we rarely ate together. Food was no longer shared at the same time. Plates were taken upstairs. Doors were closed. And when doors closed too often, hearts closed with them. I started sleeping later at night. I did not like the noise. And I did not like the quiet either. Both felt heavy. One night, I walked through the hallway at 2 a.m. The house was dark. But I could feel something. Not ghosts. Not spirits. Regret. The house felt like it was watching me. Like it knew something I did not want to admit. That maybe the house was too big for the love inside it. The proverb my grandmother used to say came back to me many times. It is better to eat dry bread in peace than meat in a house full of fighting. I used to laugh at her when I was younger. Dry bread. Why would anyone choose dry bread? Now I understood. Because peace is sweeter than meat. The problems grew. My father stopped coming home early. He said work was busy. But I knew he just did not want to come back to shouting. My mother began sleeping in a different room. My brother moved out after one serious fight. Doors slammed. Words were said that could not be taken back. The house became even bigger after he left. Empty space makes sound echo more. When my sister and I passed each other in the hallway, we did not look at each other. In a small house, it is hard to avoid someone. In a big house, it is easy to pretend someone does not exist. One evening, I sat alone in the large living room. The chandelier above me shone bright. The sofa was soft. The television was wide and clear. I felt lonely in the middle of luxury. And that is when I first thought about leaving. Not because I was poor. Not because I was weak. But because I was tired. Tired of loud words. Tired of cold greetings. Tired of living in a house that looked like success but felt like war. It happened on a rainy afternoon. The fight that changed everything. I will not repeat the words that were spoken. Some words should not be repeated. They leave scars even in memory. But I will say this. That day, I saw my mother cry in the kitchen. I saw my father walk out without looking back. And I saw myself in the reflection of the window. I looked like someone trapped. Not in poverty. In pride. That night, I packed a small bag. Just clothes. Some books. A framed picture of my grandmother. And I left. No one stopped me. Maybe they were too busy fighting. I did not know where I was going. I only knew I did not want big walls anymore. I walked for a long time. The rain had stopped. The streets were wet. Street lights reflected on the ground like broken stars. That is when I saw it. A small house. At the corner of an old road. It was not painted bright. The roof looked tired. The fence was low. But something about it felt quiet. Not silent. Quiet. Like a deep breath. I stood in front of it for a long time. There was a wooden sign near the gate. It was old and slightly broken. On it were carved the words, "The house on the corner of time." I almost laughed. What kind of name was that? But I felt something strange. Like the house was waiting. An old man opened the door before I knocked. He looked at me as if he had been expecting me. "You look tired," he said. I did not argue. He let me sit on a wooden chair inside. The room was small. Very small. But it was warm. There was only one clock on the wall. It ticked slowly. The sound was calm. Not loud. Not sharp. Just steady. The old man poured me tea. We did not talk much. After a while, he said, "Big houses can carry small hearts. Small houses can carry big peace." I stared at him. How did he know? He smiled slightly. "This house," he said, touching the wall, "is on the corner of time. People come here when they are tired of chasing noise." I did not fully understand him. But I felt safe. For the first time in a long time, my chest felt light. He offered me a small room at the back. It had a simple bed. A small window. A wooden table. No television. No chandelier. No marble floor. Just space enough to breathe. That night, I slept deeply. No shouting. No door slamming. Just the sound of the clock in the other room. And for the first time in years, I dreamed of my old small house. The one with one fan. The one where we laughed. The one where peace lived quietly in small spaces. I did not know then that this house would change me. I did not know that time itself would feel different inside those walls. I did not know that I would begin to understand the proverb in a way that would hurt and heal. But that was the beginning. The beginning of learning that comfort is not the same as peace. The beginning of learning that size does not measure happiness. The beginning of my life in the house on the corner of time. The first thing I noticed in that small house was the clock. It was not big. It was not beautiful. It was not expensive. It was round. Brown. Old. But it did not rush. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. In the big house I left behind, there were many clocks. Phones. Watches. Digital screens. Everything moved quickly. Minutes felt like seconds. Days disappeared. In this small house, time felt different. It felt wide. I woke up early the next morning. The sun came through the small window in soft lines. Dust moved in the light like tiny stars floating in the air. I lay there and listened. No shouting. No doors slamming. No footsteps running in anger. Only birds. And the clock. I did not know why, but that sound made my chest feel calm. When I stepped into the main room, the old man was already awake. He was sweeping the floor slowly. Not like someone rushing to finish. Just steady. "Good morning," he said. His voice was quiet but strong. I nodded. "Did you sleep well?" "Yes," I said. And I meant it. He smiled as if that was enough. We ate breakfast at a small wooden table. Just bread and tea. Simple. No many choices. No fancy plates. But we ate together. And something inside me felt full. Not because of the food. Because of the silence between us. It was not heavy silence. It was peaceful silence. The kind where you do not need to talk to feel understood. After breakfast, I walked around the house. There were only 3 rooms. The main room, the old man's room, and mine. That was all. The walls were not bright white like the big house. They were soft cream. The paint was not perfect. But there were no cracks from angry fists. No broken frames from thrown objects. Everything felt respected. Touched gently. Used with care. I noticed something strange that afternoon. The clock did not have numbers. I walked closer. There were small marks where numbers should be. But no numbers. Only the hands. Moving steady. "How do you know the time?" I asked. The old man looked at me. "You do not always need numbers to know time," he said. That answer did not make sense to me. But I did not argue. Days began to pass. Or maybe they did not pass. Maybe they simply rested. I cannot explain it clearly. But I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. I stopped feeling like I was late for something. I stopped counting hours. Instead, I began to notice small things. The way light entered the room at different angles. The sound of wind at night. The way tea tasted when you drank it slowly. On the 3rd day, something happened. I was sitting alone in the main room. The old man had gone outside to fix part of the fence. The clock was ticking. I closed my eyes. Suddenly, I felt like I was somewhere else. Not fully asleep. Not fully awake. I saw my old small house from years ago. The one from my childhood. My mother was younger. My father was laughing. My brother and sister were sitting close together. We were all under that single fan. Sweating. But smiling. I could hear our laughter. Clear. Real. I opened my eyes quickly. I was back in the small house on the corner. The clock was still ticking. My heart was beating fast. Was it just a memory? Or was it something more? That evening, I asked the old man something. Why is this house called the house on the corner of time? He looked at the clock before answering. Because time bends here, he said softly. I frowned. Time does not bend. He smiled again. It does, when you stop running from it. I did not understand. But I kept listening. When people live in big houses full of noise, he continued, they run. They run after money. After pride. After being right. They forget to sit with time. He pointed at the clock. Here, time sits with you. That night, I could not sleep. Not because of noise. Because of thinking. In the big house, I was always busy. Even when I was not doing anything, my mind was loud. Here, my mind was quiet enough to hear itself. And sometimes, that is scary. I began to remember things I had pushed away. The way I also shouted during fights. The way I chose pride over peace. The way I ignored my mother when she tried to talk calmly. I was not innocent. I was part of the noise too. That truth hurt. But it also felt clean. Like washing dirt from your hands. On the fifth day, I noticed something even stranger. The sun seemed to stay longer in the sky. I know that sounds impossible. But evenings did not feel rushed. In the big house, evenings felt short. Everyone locked themselves in their rooms quickly. Here, the sky turned orange slowly. Birds flew home gently. The wind cooled down like it had all the time in the world. I asked the old man, why does it feel like days are longer here? He chuckled. They are not longer, he said. You are just finally inside them. That sentence stayed with me. I am finally inside my days. In the big house, I was always thinking about tomorrow. About what someone said yesterday. About what I should achieve next week. But here, I was just here. Sitting. Breathing. Listening. One night, something happened that I cannot fully explain. I was lying in bed when I heard the clock grow louder. Not fast. Just louder. It echoed softly through the house. I sat up. And once again, I felt that strange shift. This time, I did not see my childhood. I saw the big house. But it looked older. Empty. Dust on the floor. Windows broken. No cars outside. No lights on. It looked abandoned. My chest tightened. Was that the future? Or was it just my fear? I blinked. The vision faded. I was back in my small room. The clock returned to its normal soft sound. The next morning, I told the old man everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said something simple. This house does not show you magic. It shows you truth. I swallowed. Truth about what? About what noise does to time. And what peace does to it. That day, I understood something slowly. The big house was not the problem. The fighting inside it was. The pride inside it was. The hunger to always win was. A large house full of conflict becomes smaller each day. A small house full of peace becomes wider than the sky. And that was when I began to fear something. What if I went back? Would I carry this peace with me? Or would the noise swallow me again? I looked at the clock that evening. It kept ticking. Steady. Like it did not care where I was. Like it knew time would wait. But only if I chose peace. I did not know then that part 3 would force me to face my family again. And I did not know that the house on the corner would make me choose between size and peace. But time was moving. Not rushing. Just steady. I did not plan to go back. I told myself I had left that life behind. The big house. The shouting. The pride. I told myself I had chosen peace. But sometimes peace does not mean hiding. Sometimes peace means facing what you ran from. It happened on a quiet morning. The sky was soft gray. The air felt heavy like rain was coming. I was sitting near the window in the small house, watching dust float in the light. The clock was steady as always. The old man was silent. He was fixing a small crack in the wall with care, like even the smallest damage mattered. Then there was a knock at the gate. Slow. Uncertain. Not angry. Not loud. Just a knock. My chest tightened. I do not know why, but I knew. It was someone from the big house. The old man looked at me. Time has come, he said softly. I did not ask how he knew. I walked to the door. When I opened it, my sister stood there. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not in body. In spirit. Her eyes were tired. We stared at each other for a long moment. No shouting. No pride. Just silence. I have been looking for you, she said quietly. Her voice did not carry anger. Only weight. I stepped aside and let her in. She looked around the small house slowly. This is where you have been, she asked. Yes. She did not laugh. She did not judge. She just nodded. We sat at the small table. The old man poured her tea like he already knew she would come. She held the cup with both hands, like she needed its warmth. For a while, no one spoke. The clock sounded louder than ever. Finally, she said it. Dad is sick. The words fell heavy in the small room. I did not react at first. My mind felt blank. Sick how? I asked. He collapsed 2 days ago, she said. Stress. The doctor said his heart is tired. Heart. The word hit me deep. A big house. A tired heart. I looked down at my hands. He keeps asking about you, she added. I swallowed. For months, I had imagined leaving them behind forever. But now time was pushing me back. Not to fight. Not to win. But to face. The old man stood up quietly and stepped outside, giving us space. My sister looked at me carefully. You changed, she said. How? You are calm. I almost smiled. I am learning, I said. She looked around again. This house is small, she said softly. Yes. But it feels quiet. I nodded. That is why I stayed. She began to cry suddenly. Not loudly. Just soft tears rolling down her face. I am tired, she whispered. I am tired of fighting. Her words felt like a mirror. I was tired too. We both had been tired for a long time. But in the big house, No one admitted it. Everyone pretended to be strong. Strong people do not cry. Strong people do not apologize. Strong people win. But what did we win? Silence. Distance. Broken words. I do not want us to become strangers, she said. I closed my eyes for a moment. In my mind, I saw the big house again. Large rooms. Closed doors. Echoing walls. And then I saw the small house. One table. One clock. One steady sound. I will come, I said finally. Her shoulders relaxed. Not fully. But enough. The walk back to the big house felt longer than the day I left. Each step felt heavy. The small house stood behind me at the corner. It did not try to stop me. It did not beg me to stay. It simply remained. Steady. Like it knew I would return. When the big house came into view, my chest tightened again. It looked the same. Tall. White. Impressive. But now I saw something different. It looked lonely. The gate opened slowly. The sound echoed. Inside, the air felt colder than I remembered. Not in temperature. In feeling. My mother was sitting in the living room. She looked older. Just a few months had passed, but conflict ages people quickly. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She stood up slowly. For a moment, I thought she would shout. But she did not. She walked to me and hugged me. Tight. Like she was afraid I would disappear again. I hugged her back. The hug felt unfamiliar. But real. My father was in his room. When I entered, he looked smaller too. Not in size. In strength. The man who once filled the house with loud decisions now lay quietly on a bed. Machines were not attached to him. But weakness was. He looked at me. His eyes softened. You came, he said. Yes, I answered. That was all. No long speech. No blame. Just 2 words. We sat in silence. The room felt large. Too large. I could almost hear imaginary echoes of old arguments bouncing off the walls. Then I remembered something. Peace does not come from walls. It comes from hearts. I am sorry, I said quietly. The words surprised even me. I had not planned them. But they came. For what? He asked. For my part in the noise. He stared at me for a long time. Then his eyes became wet. I am sorry too, he said. For a moment, the big room did not feel so large. It felt human. That night, something small but important happened. Instead of eating separately, we sat at the same table. The table was long enough for 10 people. But only 4 of us sat there. Still, it felt different. We did not speak much. But no one left early. No one slammed a door. No one raised their voice. It was not perfect. But it was peaceful. As I lay in my old large bedroom that night, I missed the sound of the clock. The silence here felt different. Not calm. Empty. I closed my eyes and imagined the small house at the corner. The sound echoed gently in my memory. And I understood something. The small house did not create peace. It revealed it. It showed me that peace is a choice. A choice to speak softly. A choice to listen. a choice to let pride rest. The next morning, I walked through the big house slowly. I saw things I had never noticed before. The size of the rooms did not matter. What mattered was how we filled them. With anger or with grace. Before leaving to return to the small house, my mother asked me something. "Will you stay?" I paused. I looked around the tall walls. Then I answered honestly. "I will come often. But Peace is easy when you are alone. Peace is easy in a small house with soft light and one steady clock. Peace is easy when no one is shouting. But peace is tested when someone pushes you. And someone always pushes you." After I returned from the big house, I felt stronger. Not loud strong. Quiet strong. Like a tree with deep roots. The old man watched me carefully in the days that followed. He did not praise me. He did not question me. He simply observed. The clock continued its steady sound. One afternoon, while I was sweeping the small front yard, I heard voices outside the fence. 2 men were standing there. They were well dressed. Shiny shoes. Clean shirts. Confident posture. I recognized one of them. He used to visit our big house. He always spoke about business. About money. About growth. He saw me and smiled wide. "There you are," he said loudly. "We have been looking for you." My chest tightened slightly. Not from fear. From memory. They stepped closer to the fence and looked at the small house behind me. One of them laughed softly. "You are living here?" he asked. "Yes," I said calmly. He shook his head. "You left all that space. That opportunity. For this." He did not try to hide his judgment. I felt the old feeling rise inside me. The feeling of wanting to prove something. To defend myself. To show that I was not weak. That I had not failed. That I was not small. The old pride knocked on my heart. Loud. But then I heard it. The clock inside the house. Steady. Not rushing. Not reacting. Just present. I took a slow breath. "What do you want?" I asked. They explained their plan quickly. A new project. Big investment. Fast return. They said I had the name. The connections. The background. "We can double what your father built," one of them said. Double. The word hung in the air like bait. Double the size. Double the money. Double the power. I imagined a bigger house. Even taller than the first one. More cars. More respect. More noise. "You do not belong in a place like this," the first man said, pointing at the small house. "You are meant for more." More. People love that word. More space. More success. More attention. More control. But no one talks about more stress. More pride. More distance. More conflict. I stayed silent for a moment. Inside me, 2 voices argued. One said, "Go back. Build bigger. Show them." The other said nothing. It was quiet. But steady. Like the clock. "I will think about it," I said finally. They smiled. "Do not think too long," one warned. "Opportunities do not wait." They left in a cloud of confidence. I stood there alone. The yard felt smaller. The house looked smaller. My thoughts felt loud. That evening, I could not focus. Even the tea tasted different. The old man noticed. "You are restless," he said. I nodded. "They offered me something," I admitted. He waited. "A bigger life." He smiled softly. "What is a bigger life?" I frowned. "More money. More growth." He shook his head gently. "That is a bigger bank account. Not always a bigger life." His words settled slowly. That night, I lay awake. The clock sounded louder than usual. Not aggressive. Just clear. I closed my eyes. And once again, time shifted. I saw myself in the future. Standing in another large house. Even more beautiful than the first. Guests laughing loudly. Business partners shaking my hand. Everything shining. But behind closed doors, voices rising. Arguments about control. Arguments about decisions. Arguments about respect. I saw myself shouting again. I saw my face hard. I saw my heart tight. Then the image changed. I saw myself older. Alone in a large room. Sitting at a long table with many empty chairs. Silence filled the space. Not peaceful silence. Lonely silence. I opened my eyes quickly. My chest felt heavy. Was that truly the future? Or just a warning? The clock kept moving. The next day, I walked back to the big house to see my father. He was stronger now. Sitting upright. We talked about small things at first. Then I told him about the offer. He listened carefully. "Are you tempted?" he asked. "Yes," I answered honestly. He nodded slowly. "I once chose bigger over better," he said quietly. I looked at him. I thought if the house was large, respect would be large too, he continued. I was wrong. His voice was soft. "I built space for our bodies," he said. "But not enough space for our hearts." The truth in his words was heavy. "Do not repeat my mistake," he said. That sentence stayed with me all day. Do not repeat my mistake. When I returned to the small house that evening, the sky was bright orange. The house looked simple. Almost fragile. But inside it, I felt strong. I walked straight to the clock. I stood before it. There were still no numbers. Only hands moving steady. I finally understood something. Time does not care how big your house is. It only cares how you use it. You can waste it fighting. Or you can spend it loving. The next morning, the two men returned. They expected excitement. They expected hunger. They expected ambition. I opened the gate calmly. "I will not join," I said. They stared at me like I had spoken another language. "Why?" one demanded. "Because I am building something else." "What?" "Peace." They laughed. "You cannot live on peace." I looked at them steadily. "You cannot live without it." They shook their heads and left, disappointed. For a brief second, I felt small again. Like I had missed something important. But then I turned around and looked at the small house. Light poured through the window. Birds rested on the fence. And from inside, steady. That was the day I understood the proverb fully. It is better to live in a simple house with peace than in a palace full of noise. But peace must be chosen again and again. It is not automatic. It is not easy. It is a daily decision. I did not know then that the hardest test was still coming. Because peace is one thing when you refuse temptation. It is another thing when someone you love betrays you. And that lesson was waiting. Time was still moving. Steady. Patient. Peace is beautiful. But peace becomes real when it survives pain. And pain came quietly. Not through businessmen. Not through big offers. But through someone I loved. It was 3 weeks after I refused the investment offer. Life had become simple again. Mornings were calm. Evenings were soft. The clock remained faithful. I had started helping my father slowly repair things in the big house. Not the walls. Not the roof. The relationships. Small conversations. Short visits. Gentle apologies. Nothing dramatic. Just steady work. Like the clock. One afternoon, my brother called me. We had not spoken properly in months. Our last conversation before I left the big house had been loud. Angry. Ugly. His voice on the phone was strange. Not loud. Not calm. Heavy. I need to see you, he said. We agreed to meet at the big house that evening. When I arrived, he was sitting in the large living room. The same room where many fights had started. The same room where silence once felt sharp. He did not stand when I entered. He did not smile. He looked ashamed. I did something, he said. I stayed quiet. He rubbed his hands together nervously. I took money from Dad's business account. The words felt like a stone dropped in water. Small sentence. Deep impact. How much? I asked. He said the amount. It was not small. Not small at all. My chest tightened. Not because of the money. Because of betrayal. Why? I asked quietly. I was desperate, he said. I made bad investments. I wanted to fix them before anyone noticed. That word again. More. More growth. More speed. More risk. And now. More damage. Does Dad know? I asked. He shook his head. He will, he said. Soon. I looked around the large room. It suddenly felt like the old days. Heavy. Tight. Ready to explode. I could almost hear future shouting. Future blame. Future broken words. The house felt like it was holding its breath. My brother looked at me with fear in his eyes. I know you left because of all the fighting, he said. But if this comes out, it will destroy everything again. There it was. The test. Not temptation. Not money. But anger. Would I shout? Would I judge? Would I say, you always ruin things? The old me would have. The old me loved being right. Inside me, it began to rise. Trust is fragile. And he had cracked it. I wanted to lecture him. I wanted to remind him how his pride had hurt the family before. I wanted to win. Then I heard it. Not in my ears. In my memory. The clock in the small house. Steady. Patient. unmoved by panic. I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them, I spoke slowly. "We will tell him together," I said. My brother looked shocked. "You are not angry?" "I am," I answered honestly. "But anger will not fix this." He stared at me like he did not recognize me. Maybe I did not recognize myself either. That night, we told our father. The moment felt long, heavy. My father listened without interrupting. His face did not explode with rage like before. It did not collapse either. It simply aged. Just a little. "How much is left?" he asked calmly. My brother told him. Silence filled the large room. But this silence was different from the old ones. It was painful, but not violent. "I trusted you," my father said softly. That sentence hurt more than shouting ever could. My brother's shoulders shook. "I know." For a moment, I feared the past would repeat itself. I feared doors would slam. I feared voices would rise. Instead, my father did something unexpected. He sighed deeply. "Money can return," he said. "Family cannot." The words settled like rain after heat. We sat there for a long time. Talking. Not shouting. Planning. Not accusing. The money would take time to recover. Sacrifices would be made. Comfort would reduce. But something important did not break. Us. Later that night, I walked back to the house on the corner of Time. The sky was dark, but clear. When I entered, the old man looked at my face carefully. "It happened," he said. "Yes." "And?" I sat down slowly. "It hurt." He nodded. "Peace does not remove hurt," he said. "It guides it." I let those words sink in. Peace guides hurt. It does not deny it. It does not hide it. It simply refuses to let it become war. I went to the clock. I stood before it again. No numbers. Only movement. Trust had cracked. But shouting would not repair it. Time would. Patience would. Choice would. That night, I dreamed again. I saw the big house. But this time it was different. Not silent. Not broken. Inside it, I saw us sitting together. Talking. Not perfectly. Not always agreeing. But trying. And the walls did not echo with anger. They echoed with effort. When I woke up, I understood something clearly. The proverb is not only about houses. It is about hearts. A large house full of conflict is empty. A simple house full of effort is rich. But even a large house can become peaceful if the heart inside choose it daily. The clock continued its steady sound. Time was not against us. Time was waiting to see what we would build with it. Noise. Or peace. I did not know then that the old man would soon reveal something about himself. Something that would change how I saw the house. Something that would show me why it was called the house on the corner of Time. I always thought the old man simply lived in the small house. I thought he was just a quiet person who liked simple things. I thought the clock was just an old clock. I was wrong. It began on a morning that felt different. Not louder. Not darker. Just deeper. The air felt heavy, like something was about to be said. The old man was sitting in his usual chair near the wall. The clock was behind him. He was not reading. Not fixing anything. Just sitting. Waiting. "You have learned much," he said without looking at me. I smiled slightly. "I am still learning." He nodded. "That is good. Learning keeps the heart soft." I sat across from him. For weeks, I had asked him small questions about the house. About the clock. About why time felt different here. He always answered in pieces. Never fully. But that morning felt different. "Why does time bend here?" I asked again. This time, he did not smile. He looked at the clock. Then at me. "Because this house is not just a house," he said. I stayed silent. "It stands on the corner of two things," he continued. "Past and future." I frowned slightly. "That is impossible." He shook his head gently. "Not impossible. Just rare." He stood up slowly and walked to the clock. He touched it carefully. "This clock does not measure hours," he said. "It measures attention." I did not understand. "When you lived in the big house," he said, "your mind was always ahead of time. Thinking of tomorrow. Or stuck behind it. Angry about yesterday." I nodded slowly. "That is how most people live," he continued. "But when your mind is not in the present, time feels like it is running. But when you sit inside your moment," he said softly, "time slows down. It stretches. It opens." I thought about my days here. They did feel wider. Longer. Fuller. "Who are you?" I asked quietly. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he answered in a way I did not expect. "I am someone who once lived in a very big house." The words landed softly. I leaned forward slightly. "Yes," he said. "Bigger than your father's." I blinked. "I chased more," he continued. "More money. More land. More power. I thought I was building security." He smiled sadly. "But I was building distance." His voice grew softer. "My children stopped speaking to each other. My wife stopped smiling. I told myself it was normal. That success requires sacrifice." He paused. "But I was sacrificing the wrong things." The room felt very still. Even the air seemed to listen. "One day," he continued, "I walked through my large house and heard nothing. No laughter. No talking. Only echoes." I swallowed. It sounded familiar. "I had everything," he said. "Except peace." He looked around the small room. "So I left." My heart beat faster. "You built this house?" I asked. He nodded. "With my own hands." "And the clock?" I asked. He smiled slightly. "The clock was already here." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "This land," he said quietly, "was once a meeting place long ago. People came here when they were tired of fighting. Tired of rushing." I listened carefully. "They did not bring gold. They did not bring pride. They brought honesty." He tapped the clock lightly. "The clock reminds people that time is not the enemy. Pride is." Silence settled between us. I looked at his hands. They were old. Worn. But steady. "You stayed here alone?" I asked. For many years, he said. Why? Because I needed to forgive myself. His words were simple, but deep. Did your family ever return? I asked gently. He looked toward the window. Some did, he said. Some did not. There was no bitterness in his voice. Only acceptance. I do not own this house, he continued. I looked confused. But you built it. Yes, he said. But it does not belong to me. It belongs to anyone who chooses peace. The sentence felt larger than the room. Why did you let me stay? I asked. He smiled faintly. You were not running from poverty, he said. You were running from noise. He leaned back in his chair. And you were ready to listen. I felt something shift inside me. All this time, I thought the house was healing me. But maybe the house was teaching me. Teaching me how to sit with time. How to sit with pain. How to sit with myself. Will I have to leave one day? I asked quietly. Yes, he answered without hesitation. The word surprised me. When? I asked. When you no longer need the house to remind you. The answer stayed in the air. Heavy. True. That evening, I walked around the small yard slowly. The fence. The soft walls. The simple roof. Nothing about it was grand. But everything about it was honest. I realized something important. The house was not magic. The clock was not magic. The real power was attention. When you slow down enough to listen, you see truth. When you see truth, you can choose better. That night, I had the clearest vision yet. I saw the big house again. But this time, it was filled with light. Not from chandeliers. From people sitting close together. Talking. Laughing gently. Not perfect. But trying. Then I saw the small house. Empty. The clock still ticking. Waiting for the next tired heart. I woke up with calm certainty. One day, I would leave. Not because I wanted more. But because I had learned enough. The clock continued. Not counting hours. Counting awareness. The old man looked at me the next morning and said something strange. Soon, you will understand why it is called the corner. I frowned. What do you mean? He only smiled. You will see. And that was when I began to notice something unusual about the land around the house. Something I had never paid attention to before. Something that would change everything. I had walked past the road many times. I had seen the bend. I had noticed how the path curved around the small house. But I had never truly looked at it. Not deeply. Not carefully. Until the old man said, soon, you will understand why it is called the corner. That morning, I stepped outside earlier than usual. The sky was pale blue. The air felt fresh and quiet. The small house stood behind me, simple and still. The clock sound floated gently through the open window. I walked toward the edge of the yard. And for the first time, I paid attention. The road did not just pass by the house. It split. One road curved left, toward the city. Toward tall buildings. Noise. Speed. The other curved right, toward open land. Small farms. Quiet homes. Slow days. The house stood exactly between them. Not fully on either side. Right in the middle. At the corner. I had crossed that road many times without thinking. But now I saw what the old man meant. This was not just a house at a bend. It was a meeting point. A choice point. A place where direction changes. As I stood there, a cart rolled by on the road leading to the city. The driver looked busy. Focused. In a hurry. Soon after, an old woman walked slowly down the other road, carrying vegetables in a basket. She was not rushing. She even stopped to greet someone along the way. Two roads. Two speeds. Two ways of living. The house stood quietly between them. The old man joined me outside. You see it now, he said. Yes, I answered. He nodded. Every person reaches a corner, he said. A moment where they must decide which road to walk. I swallowed slowly. I reached mine when I left the big house, I said. Yes, he replied. But that was only the first corner. I looked at him. There are more. He smiled gently. There are always more. That thought stayed with me. We think life is one big decision. But it is many small ones. Every day is a corner. Every argument is a corner. Every temptation is a corner. Do you choose pride or peace? Do you choose noise or stillness? Later that afternoon, something happened that made the lesson clearer. A young couple walked toward the house. They were arguing loudly. Their voices filled the quiet air. They did not notice me at first. You never listen, the woman shouted. And you never stop complaining, the man fired back. The argument was familiar. Too familiar. I had heard those words before. Inside big walls. Inside my own mouth. They stopped when they saw the small house. The woman wiped her eyes angrily. The man kicked a small stone in frustration. They stood at the corner of the road. One path toward the city. One toward the quiet fields. And right between them, the house. The old man stepped forward. Are you lost? He asked gently. The man shook his head. No. But his voice sounded unsure. The woman looked exhausted. We are just walking, she said. The old man nodded. Sometimes walking brings you to the place you need. They stared at him. Then at the house. Then at each other. For a moment, the argument paused. Not because it was solved, but because something interrupted it. The corner. The pause. The space to breathe. The clock sounded faintly through the open window. Steady. Unbothered. Would you like water? The old man offered. They hesitated. Then nodded. We all sat outside on simple wooden chairs. No fancy table. No large space. Just enough room. They drank quietly. Their breathing slowed. Their voices softened. No one forced them to stop fighting. No one lectured them. The corner did the work. The pause did the work. After a while, the woman spoke more calmly. I do not want us to become strangers, she said softly. The man looked at her. I do not want that either, he admitted. It was simple, but powerful. They had reached their corner. And for a moment, they chose peace. When they left, they walked down the quieter road. Not running. Not fully fixed. But the old man looked at me. Do you understand now? He asked. Yes, I said slowly. This house does not change people, he said. It gives them space to choose. That evening, I thought deeply. The big house was not evil. Money was not evil. Success was not evil. But when you stand at a corner and choose pride again and again, you end up far from peace. And sometimes you do not even remember where the corner was. I began to see my own life differently. The day I left the big house. Corner. The day I refused the investment. Corner. The day I chose not to shout at my brother. Corner. The corner is not dramatic. It is quiet. Small. Easy to ignore. But powerful. As the sun began to set, I stood between the two roads again. The city side glowed with distant lights. The quiet road faded into soft shadows. I realized something. You cannot destroy the noisy road. It will always exist. You cannot remove temptation. You cannot remove conflict completely. But you can choose your direction. Every day. That night, the old man spoke one more sentence before we slept. One day, he said, you will stand at your greatest corner. I looked at him carefully. What do you mean? He did not answer directly. Soon, you will have to decide where you belong. The words felt heavy. Where do I belong? In the small house? Or back in the big one? At the corner? Or on one road fully? The clock continued. Steady. Waiting. Because the next corner would not be small. It would demand something greater than calm words. It would demand sacrifice. Some corners are quiet. Some corners are gentle. But some corners change everything. And once you choose, you cannot go back. The day it happened began like any other. Soft light. Cool air. The clock steady. The old man was outside repairing the fence again. He always repaired small things before they became big problems. I was inside, cleaning the wooden table. Simple tasks. Simple life. Peaceful. Then a car stopped near the road. Not a cart. Not a walker. A car from the city. Fast. Sharp. Out of place. I stepped outside. It was my mother. She looked shaken. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped out. What happened? I asked immediately. She swallowed. The bank came this morning. My chest tightened. They want full payment soon, she said. The business loss, it is worse than we thought. I felt the ground shift under my feet. The money my brother had taken had created damage. But the business had already been weak before that. Too much expansion. Too much pressure. Too many risks. The big house had not just been full of conflict. It had been full of loans. If we cannot pay, my mother said quietly, we may lose the house. The words landed heavy. Lose the house. The large white building on the hill. The place of noise. The place of pride. The place of memories. Good and bad. Gone. I looked toward the small house behind me. Then toward the city road. Corner. I felt it clearly. This was not a small choice. This was not about speaking softly. This was about direction. What does Dad say? I asked. He says we must sell land, she replied. But it will not be enough. Silence sat between us. Even from outside, I could almost hear the clock. Steady. Not panicking. An idea began to form in my mind. Slow. Heavy. Dangerous. What if we sell the house? I asked. My mother looked shocked. That house is your father's pride, she said. Yes, I answered softly. And it is also his burden. Her eyes filled with conflict. The house is our name, she whispered. I shook my head gently. No. Our name is how we treat each other. The words surprised even me. But they felt true. That evening, we all gathered in the big living room again. My father, my mother, my brother, my sister, and me. The same room that had once been full of shouting. Now full of fear. My father looked tired. Not weak. Just tired. I will find a way, he said firmly. I looked at him carefully. At what cost? I asked. He frowned slightly. We cannot lose this house, he said. Why? I asked quietly. The question hung heavy. He opened his mouth to answer. Then stopped. Because the real answer was not about walls. It was about pride. About what people would say. About status. About image. I knew that feeling. I had felt it too. Dad, I said gently, is this house giving us peace? Silence. No one spoke. Or is it giving us pressure? My brother looked down. My mother's eyes were wet. My sister held her breath. It is just a house, I continued softly. We made it too important. My father stood up slowly. You do not understand what I built, he said. I understand, I replied. You built it with love. But it grew into something else. The words were risky. Sharp. Honest. Corner. The air felt tight. I could almost hear old anger trying to wake up. Old patterns trying to return. But something was different now. We had all tasted peace recently. And once you taste it, noise becomes harder to choose. What are you saying? My father asked finally. I am saying we sell it, I answered. The sentence echoed. Sell it. Sell the big house. Give up the hill. Give up the image. Give up the pride. My mother gasped softly. My brother looked shocked. My sister stared at me like I had broken something sacred. But my father just stood still. Very still. Where would we go? He asked quietly. I took a slow breath. There are smaller houses, I said. Closer together. Easier to manage. Easier to fill with people instead of silence. He looked around the large room. The high ceiling. The expensive lights. The wide empty space between us. For a moment, I saw something shift in his eyes. Memory. Regret. Realization. This house nearly broke us, I said gently. Why are we fighting to keep it? Silence again. In my mind, I heard the small clock. Choice. Direction. My father sat down slowly. He covered his face with his hands. Not in shame. In weight. After a long moment, he spoke. I thought giving you this house was giving you security. His voice cracked slightly. But I did not see it was taking your closeness. No one interrupted. Finally, he looked up. If we sell, he said slowly, we lose status. Yes, I answered. But we may gain peace. The sentence hung between us like a fragile bridge. That night lasted long. We talked. We calculated. We feared. We imagined. But no one shouted. No one blamed. The corner was clear. And we stood in it together. 3 days later, the decision was made. The house would be sold. The hill would no longer be ours. The big white walls would belong to someone else. And we would move. Not to poverty, but to simplicity. When the sign went up in front of the house, I stood and looked at it for a long time. For years, that house had been proof of success. Now it was proof of learning. Proof that we chose better over bigger. Proof that we stood at the corner and turned. The day we packed was emotional. Memories live in walls. But we did not fight. We worked together. Side by side. Boxes were lighter than pride. When I returned to the house on the corner of time that evening, I felt different. Not proud. Not scared. Just clear. The old man looked at me carefully. You chose, he said. Yes. And you cannot undo it, he added. I know. He nodded slowly. That is why it matters. That night, the clock sounded softer than ever. Not warning. Not testing. Just steady. Because the biggest lesson had begun. We had chosen peace over image. We had chosen closeness over space. We had chosen simple over impressive. And life would never be the same again. But I did not know something yet. The old man had been waiting for this choice. Waiting for me to stop needing the house. And soon, he would leave. After we sold the big house, everything felt lighter. Not easier, but lighter. We moved into a smaller home near the edge of town. It had only 4 rooms. The walls were simple. The yard was narrow. But the rooms felt closer. When someone laughed in one room, you could hear it in the others. When someone sighed, you noticed. We were near each other again. And something inside the family began to breathe. But I still returned often to the house on the corner of time. It had become part of me. Or maybe I had become part of it. The old man watched me carefully in those days. He asked fewer questions. He spoke less. The clock continued as always. Steady. Faithful. One evening, as the sun fell low, the old man called me outside. His voice was softer than usual. Sit, he said. I sat beside him on the wooden bench near the fence. The 2 roads stretched out in front of us. City to the left. Quiet fields to the right. And the small house between them. You no longer stand at the corner in confusion, he said. I thought about it. He was right. When I first came, I was running. Now I was choosing. I learned because of this place, I said. He shook his head gently. You learned because you were ready. The air felt still. Too still. Something was different. Are you leaving? I asked suddenly. He smiled. You hear it already. My chest tightened. Leaving where? He looked at the road toward the fields. I have lived long enough between moments, he said. It is time to rest. His words felt final. Not like a trip. Not like a visit. Final. Fear rose in my chest. But this house, I began. He interrupted gently. The house was never mine. I swallowed. Then who will stay? He looked at me carefully. That depends. I felt the weight of his gaze. You cannot stay here forever, he continued. You were not meant to hide at the corner. I am not hiding, I said quickly. He raised an eyebrow softly. No. The question made me pause. Was I staying because I loved peace? Or because I feared losing it? I am afraid, I admitted quietly. Of what? That if I leave this place, I will lose what I learned. He nodded slowly. That is the final lesson. We sat in silence for a long time. The sky grew darker. The clock ticked behind us. You think peace lives in this house, he said. I did not answer. But peace lives where you carry it, he finished. The next morning, he was weaker. Not sick. Just slower. He moved carefully through the small rooms. He touched the walls gently. The table. The chair. The clock. As if saying goodbye. I followed him quietly. Tell me what to do, I said. He looked at me kindly. Do not turn this house into a temple, he said. I frowned. What do you mean? Do not worship the corner. Life beyond it. His voice was calm. Strong. Even in weakness. We sat beneath the clock one last time. I watched the hands move. Still no numbers. Still no rush. Why no numbers? I asked again. He smiled faintly. Because numbers make people hurry. I felt tears rise in my eyes. You changed my life, I whispered. He shook his head gently. No, he said. You changed your direction. That night, he lay down in his small room. The house felt quieter than ever. The air felt heavy. The clock did not stop. It never stopped. I sat beside him. His breathing was soft. Slow. Steady. Like the clock. Remember, he said faintly. I will. The corner is not a place, he whispered. It is a moment. A tear fell down my cheek. Then he closed his eyes. And did not open them again. The house did not shake. The wind did not roar. The clock did not change. Life moved forward. Quietly. We buried him near the quiet road, under a white tree. No grand ceremony. No large crowd. Just simple words. Simple goodbye. That evening, I stood alone between the two roads. The small house behind me. The city ahead. The fields to the side. The corner. For the first time, it felt empty. Not peaceful. Just empty. The keeper was gone. I walked back inside. The clock still hung on the wall. Still ticking. Still steady. But something had shifted. The house felt like it was waiting. Not for him. For me. I understood then. The old man had not just lived here. He had gathered a lesson. And now the lesson was mine. But I had to decide. Would I stay at the corner? Or would I leave and live what I learned? Time was not stopping. And neither could I. The next part would not be about grief. It would be about responsibility. Because when the keeper leaves, someone must decide what the house becomes. The first night without him felt strange. The house was the same. The walls were the same. The small table. The wooden chairs. The soft cream paint. And the clock. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. I sat in his chair. I had never sat there before. It felt wrong. Like wearing someone else's shoes. The air inside the house felt wider now. Not warmer. Not colder. Just wider. Like space had opened. For the first time, I noticed how quiet the house truly was. When he lived here, his presence filled it. Now it echoed. Not with noise. With possibility. The next morning, I stepped outside early. The two roads stretched out like open hands. City on the left. Quiet field on the right. And the house between them. Corner. I finally understood something clearly. The house had never been about staying. It was about choosing. And once you choose clearly, you move. But move where? That question followed me like a shadow. Should I stay here and guide others? Should I guard the house like he did? Or should I go fully back into life and carry the lesson there? The clock did not answer. It never forced direction. It only reminded. That afternoon, something happened that made the choice clearer. The same young couple who once came arguing returned. This time they were calmer. They knocked softly on the fence. I opened the gate. "Is the old man here?" the woman asked gently. I swallowed. "He passed away." Their faces fell. "Oh," the man said quietly. "We wanted to thank him," she added. They stepped inside slowly. The house felt smaller with 3 people inside. But not crowded. Just close. They looked around as if expecting him to appear. "He helped us," the man said softly. "We almost broke." The woman nodded. "We were standing at a corner," she said. Her words made my chest tighten slightly. Yes. They understood. "Can we sit for a moment?" she asked. I hesitated. Then nodded. We sat beneath the clock. They grew quiet. Their breathing slowed. Their shoulders relaxed. Just like before. The house was still doing what it always did. Creating space. Creating pause. Creating clarity. After a while, they stood to leave. "Thank you," the man said. I shook my head. It was not me. He smiled slightly. "It never is," he replied. They walked down the quieter road together. Not perfect. But aware. I stood alone again. The truth settled slowly. The house did not belong to a person. It belonged to moments. It belonged to people who needed pause. But I could not stay here forever. Because if everyone stayed at the corner, no one would walk the road. That evening, I went back to my family's new smaller home. The difference was clear. We cooked together in a tight kitchen. We passed plates carefully because there was not much space. We heard each other breathe. We heard each other laugh. There were no long empty hallways. No closed doors for hours. The house was small. But it felt wide. Wide with warmth. Wide with effort. My father looked at me across the table. "You are thinking," he said. Yes, I answered. About the old man. Yes. He nodded slowly. You stayed long enough, he said quietly. The word surprised me. You noticed? I asked. He smiled faintly. I notice more now. That sentence carried weight. We had all changed. I think I need to leave the corner, I admitted. My mother looked up. Leave it empty, she asked softly. I shook my head. It will never be empty. People will always reach it. And who will guide them? My brother asked. I thought carefully before answering. They will guide themselves. Silence settled. But not heavy silence. Understanding silence. Later that night, I returned one last time to the house on the corner of time. The sky was clear. Stars scattered softly above. I walked slowly through each room. The small bedroom. The table. The chair. Then I stood before the clock. For the first time, I did not need it. Not because I stopped respecting it, but because its rhythm lived inside me now. Steady. Calm. Present. I understand, I whispered softly. The clock did not answer. It never did. It only continued. I walked outside. I stood between the two roads. And I felt no confusion. No fear. Just direction. The corner had done its work. It had slowed me. It had shown me truth. It had tested me. And now, it was time to walk. But before leaving, I did one simple thing. I removed the wooden sign near the gate. Not to destroy it. To carry it. The house would remain. But the message needed to travel. As I walked toward the road leading back to my family, I did not look back in sadness. I looked back in gratitude. The house had not saved me. It had reminded me. Peace is not found in walls. It is chosen in moments. And every day, we stand at a corner. Not from the wall anymore. From within me. Choose. Life. Only one final part remains. Because peace is not complete until it is lived fully beyond the corner. Leaving the corner felt different from arriving at it. When I first came, I was running. When I left, I was walking. Steady. Certain. The sound no longer came from a wall. It came from inside me. Life in our smaller house began to settle into rhythm. We did not have wide hallways. We did not have shining floors. We had close chairs. We had shared space. We had voices that could be heard from room to room. And because of that, we heard each other. The first test came sooner than I expected. It was small. Very small. My brother and I disagreed about how to rebuild part of the business. Old patterns tried to rise. He spoke sharply. I felt the old heat in my chest. The old need to win. The old desire to prove I was right. Corner. Right there. In the middle of a simple kitchen. I paused. Not loud. Just steady. I lowered my voice instead of raising it. I may be wrong, I said slowly. Explain it to me. The room shifted. His shoulders dropped slightly. He explained. I listened. We found a middle path. The moment passed. Small victory. But real. That is when I understood something important. Peace is not dramatic. It is quiet work. It is catching your voice before it becomes a weapon. It is choosing patience when pride feels easier. It is remembering that winning an argument can mean losing a relationship. Weeks passed. Then months. The business did not grow fast. But it grew healthy. Slow steps. Careful choices. No rushing. No risky expansion. No chasing the more. Just steady progress. One evening, my father and I sat outside the new house. The sun was setting. The air was calm. "You have changed," he said quietly. "So have you," I replied. He nodded. "I used to believe size meant success," he said. "Now I believe peace means success." I smiled. "That is a better measure." Our home became warmer. Not because of money. Because of attention. We began eating together regularly. We began listening without interrupting. We began apologizing faster. Not perfect. But aware. And awareness changes everything. Sometimes I thought about the small house at the corner. I wondered if people still stop there. If someone else had discovered its quiet power. But I did not feel the need to return. The lesson had moved. From walls. Into life. One afternoon, something unexpected happened. A young man came to our new house. He looked tired. Confused. Restless. "I was told you once lived at a house near the corner road," he said. I felt my chest warm slightly. "Yes," I answered. "They said it helps people think clearly." I smiled faintly. "It does not help," I said gently. "It pauses." He looked confused. I invited him to sit. Not in a grand room. Just on a simple chair near the doorway. We sat quietly. No lecture. No long speech. Just space. After a while, he began speaking. About pressure. About expectations. About fear of failure. I listened. Carefully. Patiently. The way the old man once listened to me. Inside. When he left, he looked lighter. Not because his problems were gone. But because he had faced them calmly. I realized then. The corner travels through people. It does not stay in one place. That night, as I lay in my simple room, I thought deeply. The house on the hill had been impressive. The house at the corner had been powerful. But this house, this small, ordinary home, was alive. Because we filled it with daily choices. Peace is not found once. It is practiced. Every conversation. Every disagreement. Every temptation. Corner. Choose. Walk. Months later, I passed by the old corner road by accident. The small house still stood there. Quiet. Unchanged. The sign was gone. But the space remained. I did not stop. I did not need to. I simply looked at it from a distance. And smiled. I finally understood the full proverb in my bones. It is better to live in a simple house full of peace than in a large house full of conflict. But more than that, it is better to build a simple heart that carries peace into any house. The story is almost complete. There is only one last part. Because peace is not proven by one generation. It is proven when it continues. Years passed. Not rushed. Not wasted. Just lived. Not from a clock on a wall. From the steady rhythm inside my chest. Our small house became home in the deepest way. Not because it was perfect, but because we kept choosing it. Choosing each other. Choosing calm over noise. Choosing understanding over winning. The business survived. Slowly. Carefully. We no longer chased more. We chased balance. Enough profit to live. Enough time to sit together. Enough space to breathe. We learned something simple. Enough is powerful. More is endless. One evening, my sister laughed loudly in the kitchen. The sound filled every room. There were no long hallways to swallow it. No closed doors to block it. Just open space. And I remembered the old big house. How laughter once got lost there. How silence once felt heavy. And I felt grateful. My father grew older. Softer too. He no longer spoke about status. He spoke about gratitude. Sometimes he would look at our small home and say, "This is enough." And every time he said it, I felt the truth of it. One day, my brother asked me something unexpected. "Do you ever miss the big house?" he said. I thought carefully. "I miss who we thought we were in it," I answered. He nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "We thought we were important." "We are important," I said gently. "Just not because of walls." Time continued. My parents grew slower. We grew wiser. And peace stopped feeling like a lesson. It became normal. Natural. Part of daily life. Then one morning, something small but powerful happened. A disagreement began at breakfast. A simple misunderstanding. Voices started to rise. Just slightly. Old habits knocking. Old patterns testing. Corner. Right there at the table. I saw it clearly. The moment. The choice. I looked at my brother. He looked at me. And without speaking, we both softened. We both paused. We both chose. The argument faded before it grew. Peace won. Not loudly. Quietly. That is how real peace wins. Years later, I had children of my own. And one evening, my son asked me a question. "Why is our house small?" Children ask direct questions. Honest questions. I smiled. "Because we like to hear each other laugh," I said. He thought about that. Then he nodded. Satisfied. Children understand more than we think. As he grew, I taught him something simple. Whenever you feel angry, I told him, imagine you are standing at a corner. "What corner?" he asked. "The corner between shouting and listening," I said. He smiled. "And I choose." "Yes," I said. "You always choose." One afternoon, many years after the old man passed, I walked alone toward the place where the small house once stood. I had not been there in a long time. The house was gone. The land was open. Grass had grown where walls once stood. The two roads still met there. City to the left. Fields to the right. Corner. Still there. Still quiet. Still waiting for someone to notice it. I stood there for a long time. No clock. No walls. No wooden chairs. But I felt it clearly. The pause. The space. The choice. The corner was never about the house. It was about awareness. About slowing down long enough to choose peace. The wind moved gently through the grass. I closed my eyes. And for a moment, I could almost hear it. Not from wood. Not from metal. From within me. Steady. Faithful. Present. I understood something fully at that moment. You do not need a special house to find peace. You do not need to escape the world. You do not need to own little or own much. You only need to recognize the corner when you reach it. And choose wisely. Again. And again. And again. The proverb that once sounded simple now felt deep. Better a small house with peace than a large house with conflict. But deeper still, better a simple heart that builds peace wherever it stands. I walked away from the corner that day, not because it disappeared, but because it lived inside me now. Inside my family. Inside the way we speak. Inside the way we pause. Inside the way we forgive. Time continues. It always will. And every day, in small moments that seem unimportant, we stand at a corner. We may not see it. We may not feel it. But it is there. Between pride and humility. Between anger and understanding. Between noise and peace. And when you pause, when you breathe, when you listen, you choose your road. I once lived in the biggest house in town. And I once lived in the smallest house at a quiet bend. But the greatest house I ever built was the one inside my heart. And there is room for peace. Always.